What if the legalization of vices currently outlawed would enhance our capacity to reach those that Jesus expects us to care for? Have you ever considered that? How often do we challenge our thinking and reflect on our societal norms as followers of Jesus? Why do we as believers find it challenging to accept that legality, it doesn't always align with morality? And why is it difficult to be at peace with this realization? Do we as believers and followers of Jesus support public policies that are incongruent with a biblical worldview? And if so, how would we know without discussing it with others? We will discuss this today on episode 5 of the Just a Thinker podcast. I am your host, Brian Budka. Today, let's consider why confusing legal with moral hinders us from carrying out the Lord's work. As believers, we often grapple with that incongruity between legality and morality. I know I have. Why is it difficult to accept this and find peace within that realization? Perhaps it's our reluctance to confront the unintended consequences of our action. Prohibition laws intended to curb societal ills often exacerbate problems, perpetuating cycles of violence and harm. Despite our best intentions, these laws fall far short of addressing the root causes of the vices, such as drug abuse, drinking, gambling, and even prostitution. Laws convict us after the fact, but rarely do they prevent unwanted behavior. Did we not learn anything from the Old Testament about the law's ability to keep us righteous? And was it even possible for a good Jew to keep the law perfectly? And for those who might have done it well, not perfect, but well, could become a source of pride, the opposite of the law's intent? Just consider this simple thought experiment. Imagine today you decide to walk away from your faith, and instead of facing a problem by going to the Lord, praying, reading scripture, talking to a trusted friend to work through it and to pray with you, you just wanted to solve this problem, reduce this pain by finding some illegal drugs. You wanted to get a hold of oxy without a prescription, or a little heroin, or whatever it is that you think would curb the pain that you are feeling. Do you think it would be that hard to come across whatever illegal substance you wanted to get in the next 24 to 72 hours? I feel pretty confident that within 72 hours, maybe even within a handful of hours, if there were illegal drugs I wanted, I could find them within a 45 to 60-minute drive. I don't think that would be a problem. No, I'm not currently hanging out with drug users, drug abusers. Don't hang out with a bunch of criminals. But I think we all know if we did that thought experiment, we probably would say the same. So we should, as believers, understand that merely being aware of the law doesn't change our hearts. All of those things would be illegal, like we just talked about, but we could find them. And in that thought experiment, the issue really wasn't that I was in physical pain. It was emotional pain. Now, let's be thoughtful. There are probably some people who are buying oxy illegally or even heroin. Started off with a physical pain that became unmanageable. And because of laws and regulations or just the challenge of their doctor prescribing the right amount, or fear of the patient becoming addicted to these drugs, or whatever the case may have been, they ran out of the drug. And at some point in time, the pain persisted, the physical pain persisted, and now they're abusing heroin. Okay, those are still some people that are caught in that cycle that are doing things that are illegal, but ultimately an issue tied to the heart, whether it's narcotics, gambling, prostitution. The root cause of these things is not addressed by the law. Not at all. Because most of the folks engaging in these things, they're looking for painkillers for an emotional wound or deficit, a spiritual issue. We as believers, as followers of Jesus, shouldn't we know that better than anyone else? Only Jesus can change hearts, as he is Only Jesus can change our hearts. He's the great physician, the true great physician. He performs the best heart transplants. He can change my heart. But prohibition, I would say, has consequences that outweigh the benefits in almost all cases. And we're going to talk about what prohibition really is and the consequences in a second. But just think back to the early 20th century when alcohol was prohibited. How do we get to prohibition? What are the consequences? So, the way we get to prohibition is that society deems that something causes enough harm, like alcohol in the 20th century, or currently various drugs like cannabis or cocaine, and outlaws their manufacture, distribution, sale, possession, and consumption, right? We stop the ability of someone to make alcohol in the case of the early 20th century or today to generally grow poppy seeds and then go through the manufacturing or the process to convert poppy seeds into heroin. And then the demand for the newly outlawed item has only become slightly reduced. Remember, demand, supply. So the demand for the newly outlawed item, in this case narcotics, is only slightly reduced. And people are willing to pay more for those things that are illegal, right? And this now opens up the black market because some will find the higher price paid offsets the consequences of getting caught making it or selling it. We know this to be true in action. When price goes up, that often drives new providers into the market. And this is true of illegal drugs. Organized crime gets involved because of high margin. Remember, when price goes up, that's a signal to those who would provide that product or service to begin providing more of it. So without legal recourse, when disputes arise, the buyers and sellers, they revert to coercion, violence to settle their disputes because they cannot go to a court of law. And this isn't just because they're fighting over territory. It could be a drug that they thought they were buying oxy and it wasn't oxy or it was laced with something else like fentanyl. So the level of violence typically increases, as does the value of the market, and brings in a greater desire for law enforcement involvement. And this adds a greater tax burden. Then we get gang-related shootings and murders. Why? Because they're protecting their sales territory, or they're handling disputes that can't be taken to a court of law. And this creates this vicious cycle in which the cost of protecting a sales territory are passed on to the consumer, just like in the legal world of selling products, the taxes the government imposes on the corporation are paid by the consumer in the form of the price. So again, the violence and the cost of protecting its sales territory is passed to the consumer. High prices, those high prices attract more sellers. This increases the violence. It increases the need for police. It increases the need for taxes. It's a terrible cycle. Brian, they're bad. Yes. We need to help the people on it. Yes. If we care about those who are dying from drug overdoses, especially now with fentanyl being mixed in, shouldn't we be reconsidering the consequences of our laws? Think about this again, another thought experiment. Think about your job, whether you're the boss leading a department or maybe you're the owner. If someone comes to you and they say, I need to take some time off because I'm struggling with alcohol. I need to go to rehab. It's affecting my family, affecting my job. I want to change. What are you going to tell the person? Absolutely. Now, imagine that same person. She comes to you and says, boss, I need to request some time off. I am battling heroin. I've had pain issues. I've had this issue and I can't beat it on my own. I need to go seek treatment. Now, you're probably going to let her off, right? But she's now, if she's in Texas, admitted to felony possession of heroin. That's these drugs, possession, not just the sale and distribution, possession will land you in jail. You could spend up to 2 years, based on Texas law, in prison for possession of heroin, just personal use levels, not cartel warehouse levels. So for years, I struggled with feeling like the laws and morality should be intertwined, in the sense that As a Christian, I know these things are harmful to me. I know they are detrimental to families. And because of that, God frowns on the abuse of drugs and these other things we're discussing. And so they should be illegal, because if they're legal, people will think they're moral. And it was a struggle, because in our home or in our congregation, we adhere to these things, and especially in our homes. But what we're forgetting is the unintended consequences. The violence goes up. The violence and destruction goes hand in hand with these things. Yeah, but Brian, if we legalize them, are you saying is that because you want access to cocaine or heroin, or you want to buy a date? No, no. I love my wife. I am thankful she is my bride. And if I were single, I would not, that's not what I would be looking for. Do I have bad days? Yes. Do I know that if I solve my problems with alcohol or drugs, that that's not a long-term? Yes, I do. I know it's wrong. So I'm not defaulting to those things. Nor do I think my friends in my community should either. But I also know that if I'm outlawing them and all the consequences that come with them, it's also going to be much harder to reach those that as a follower of Jesus, I'm supposed to care about. And that is the driving factor. If I want to show concern for those neighborhoods with the gang violence, yes, we need to work on fathers in the homes, and we'll talk about that because that's the number one issue. But if we could bring down the market demand for violence, that would be great. If we could get rid of fentanyl overdoses almost overnight, that would be great. And we can talk about how prohibition impacts even those that are in the as they call it, the sex trade. Am I advocating that? No. But our care for those folks who are in it and others associated with it are impacted negatively by the laws. And I just don't mean a consequence for their choices, and we'll dig into that deeply, but things like human trafficking, that prostitution is illegal, allows so much trafficking to go unnoticed. Or if the police raid a place that is involved in prostitution, and maybe some of those women are actually being trafficked at that time, whether they're adult women or minors, they ended up getting rounded up as a criminal, but they were there against their will. Like, these things should be near and dear to our hearts as Christians, as believers. Why? Because they were very important to our Lord, to Jesus. These things were important. Brian, drugs, alcohol, selling yourself? No, not those things. Jesus was never encouraging those things, but did he care about the lady who is selling her affection? Yes. Does he care about a teenager who is solving an emotional wound with drugs or narcotics, the same for an adult? Does he care for the one who moved from oxy for a legitimate back issue to heroin and now their life is ruined? Yes. And if we claim the same, that we care about those whom Jesus cares about, then I have to rethink this. Nope, you won't agree with me today. Even if I'd made an exponentially better argument, you're not going to change your mind today, I don't think. But do this. Have a discussion with others. Think about this. Pray about this. Feel free to leave a lot of comments below. Say comments below when this gets posted on Facebook or YouTube. Feel free to go to those places, even if you're listening to this on a podcast or you're just doing the audio. Find us on Facebook. Leave a comment. Tell us why we're wrong. Tell us why you might agree. Maybe some things we left out. We will dive deeper into the individual categories of things that have been impacted by prohibition, from narcotics to gambling, sex work. Any of those things we'll address. So again, pray about these things. Talk about them with others. Just think about it.